enjoying and loving Korea, so it's gonna be awesome. Anyways, okay. Today we're gonna be talking about Myeongyeol. He wrote the box office stories, the 3 episodes, the police box office stories. He was born in 1948 and is 66 years old currently and is still kicking. So, sorry. Okay, here's a picture of him. He doesn't look 66. As all Koreans, they tend to look pretty young for their age. So, okay. We're going to talk about his young life here. He has one, as Professor Pearson kind of highlighted for us a couple of days ago. Thank you. His, let's see. Well, we'll just talk. He was born here in Seoul. There in Seoul. During the outbreak of the Korean War, his father defected to North Korea. It caused his family to move until they got to the Myeongyeol, Mukdo, which was the ancestral seat of his family. I tried doing some more research on his background, what happened to his mother. I don't know where she went to. I couldn't find anything on that, or the main reasons why his father defected, other than his father obviously agreed with the North Korean ways. But also due to his father's defection, he was seen and treated as the son of a political offender and passed around relatives. So obviously, being that dishonoring family and things like that is, bad omens in Korea, very Beto. So with that happening, he said he went from house to house to house, and actually eventually dropped out of Seoul National University. He was there actually attending school. So obviously he was no dummy to begin with, as we know that's the top college in South Korea. He ended up making it big and lit through the annual literary contest of Daegu Mail newspaper in 1977 and Dong-ae Ilbol in 1979. So he's kind of one of those, was that Steve Jobs, Bill Gates type people, drop out of school and become famous and rich. So he was also awarded the Today's Writer Award for his story The Son of Man in 1979, which I will talk about here in a few moments. But he became the most noteworthy writer of the time during the 70s there. So, The Son of Man, I did obviously just the brief overview of it. Kind of went and found a website and just read the brief. But it explores the theme of the complex relationship between God and humanity and light to the finite nature of human existence through the eyes of the protagonist who is doubtful of the Christian Weltanschauung. So, yeah, I had no idea what Weltanschauung was and couldn't find it anywhere online other than, the word. So
I am also doubtful of the Christian Weltanschauung.
I'm going to have to doubt that as well. I'm going to go ahead and doubt it. That's German, but what the heck?
Yeah. So don't ask me where he came up with that. So obviously he's very well educated, obviously, though he did not graduate from college. But as it was talking about with the highlights too, I feel like kind of based on his previous life, and how his young years and growing up with the trials that he kind of went through, and he himself was having issues with kind of trusting and believing in a God.
It's just a philosophy. I don't know why they use the German word.
It says philosophy?
Like cognitive philosophy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I couldn't find an actual definition of a word, and I didn't know any German dictionaries online. So, but like I was saying, due to his kind of rough, history as a young child, I feel like he was trying to kind of get across what he felt like when he was growing up. Kind of doubtful of a God with all this crap he went through, his father defecting and people not respecting him, among different things like that. So
is he Christian?
He is now, yes. So he's considered Christian.
Like after this story, he later became Christian?
Yes, as far as I can remember, there were several years where he wasn't. He ran into some people and kind of got engrossed in the religion, and he's considered Christian. So, but that's why I thought it was pretty intriguing that happened. So it kind of related, I guess, to his life story. So I'm not exactly sure when he converted to Christianity, so I'm not sure if this really was before or after. My thoughts are that it probably was after, because also in the story, the protagonist, who is doubtful of Christian, also becomes converted. So, it's pretty interesting. This is another one that Professor Pearson had highlighted. It was in one of our poem books here. It's called Early Spring, Midsummer. So it was a very intriguing story, honestly. I kind of tried to find morals and the points of it, but it was a little scattered kind of everywhere, so it was really difficult for me to try and pinpoint some things. But this is just kind of what I came up with. It talked a lot about, I'll just read what I had highlighted here. He never had a father, obviously, as I had talked about, so he created a fictitious one for himself of what his father would have been like. So it's a story where he he just goes on, like I'm talking about, he has a really great family, you know, he has some siblings, a mother and a father, he has both. And again, I don't know anything about the mother side of it, but the father in the story turns out being just this really fantastic man that really is able to take care of the kids. You know, he goes out and works and comes home, loves his wife, loves his kid, and loves the ideals, and just really focuses on, you know, being a really person of high prestige and respect in his area where they were living. So again, like I said, he didn't have a father, so I thought that this story kind of related a lot to his past of what his ideal father would have been like, you know, had he been able to grow up with one. This is what he pictured his father being like, had his father not defected, sticking around. So, but he also puts the investor's part when the father leaves for a while, but then returns, anxious to be with his family and share stories of his travels. So the father also ends up in the story leaving, you know, going on this huge adventure for several months, and comes back with stories and gifts for the family, and just this really happy man. And you could just tell that, you know, he didn't just abandon the family for a while, but he actually came back. So again, with relating to his previous father, or his non-existent, you know, defective father, he was, you know, kind of ideally hoping that even though his father had defected, that one day he might be able to come back and fulfill his role as a father. You know, things like that. So I just think it's really interesting. Those first two stories just really concentrate and focus on his life. The box of stories I'll talk about here in a second really doesn't talk too much about the life. It's more about culture and the idealism of Korea. But these are just the two biggest stories, which is why I think Chris Pearson preferred this one too, that just really reflect, you know, his current state of mind with family and his ideals of growing up from a child without one. So this is just a picture. Please box office stories to highlight a slight overview here. It goes through 3 different episodes, as it says, for those of you who are able to read it. It talks about, you know, what happens with the Japanese occupation, and then it goes on where the North and South, you know, split, and you have the communist Koreans and the conservative Koreans with that. This is just a picture of the Japanese kind of torturing a man that they believed to be anti-Japanese. So what these people would do when the Japanese would find out, obviously I'm sure we're all aware, is they'd go and, you know, torture him, beat him up, or whatever, you know, take him to prison, kill him, whatever they saw fit to do. And that's not to say that the Koreans didn't even have their own police force at the same time, though, too. I mean, you had the Korean police force, but with the Japanese occupation, they would come in and were the actual enforcers and kind of told the police what to do. There was never a mutual understanding between the two groups. So we see a lot of just that, and then even when the Korean police were suspected of, you know, Japanese treason or whatever, they'd come in, you know, kill the policeman for their treason, and then obviously replace them with a more dedicated Korean. And then there's that. I thought that'd be kind of cool, police box office. So for those of you that like Doctor Who, that goes out to you guys. Anyone?
I know the reference, but I don't like it.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
No?
Oh,
Okay. Well, I introduced you guys, so there we go. Okay, but yeah, just talk about the overview. And this is where my slides got deleted.
Hey, question?
Yes.
What's a police box? I just barely saw your picture and thought about it and realized I don't know why that exists.
Police box, from my understanding,
Like, why is there a box?
a box, as far as the translation went with the Korean box, it meant kind of a police, I had the perfect word here, deleted it. Like area, it was kind of like police area, like it just takes an area of the police, I guess, so I'm trying to figure out how to explain
It's a
it,
police
sorry.
station, right? I mean, it's
Like
just
a
the
Just like a
British.
little
Like
box.
the British call it a police box. In Korea, they also call it, like, if you see the English translations, they'll call their little police stations their gyeongcha. So it's like police boxes.
Yeah.
It's just a small police station.
Yeah.
I think it's originally, like the British call it a police box, and we just call it a police station.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But for this one too, my thoughts on it were the reason why he used the translation of box instead of station with it though too is, like I said, it's very isolated. The Japanese tried to make sure the clans didn't communicate, so it was more boxed off. You know, it was kind of just boxed in other words, from the Japanese. They, you know, didn't mind commerce and trades and stuff, but they did a lot to really keep people from communing with one another. So that's why I feel like he used the definition of box for the translation. You know, they had several Japanese that would be there all the time watching them, making sure nothing was going on. So they couldn't necessarily get out of the box, and if they did, you know, they were always, you know, asked what they're doing, where they're going. So it was just basically a prison. So, but obviously you can't call it a police prison because it's kind of an oxymoron. So he used the word box, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Also throughout the story, he uses the word clan. He talks about his clan. As as far as translation with the Korean as well, instead of a clan, it comes out with, just group of people or, just kind of a large mass or group or anything like that is also another translation. The word it used was, sorry, I deleted my Korean on there too. Sahyong or something like that. Sorry, it's gone, so it kind of irritates me. But so like I said, I feel like he chose the word clan in the translation for this as well, because throughout the story it talks about how in their clan they have to stick together through anything that's going on, Even when they have defectors or those that would go and help the Japanese, it's always blood comes first. So with the translation using the word clan, I went to the Merriam-Webster to find out exactly, a closer definition of clan, and it comes out with a large family. And again, as we saw with his previous life, he didn't have much of a family growing up, so most of his stories do center around family and the ideals of Korea. But at the same time, with these stories, he goes on about 3 different instances, or 3 different episodes of times when, Koreans would betray one another, but then they would come back because they would feel guilty for what they had done, knowing that blood needed to come first before, political views or anything that other people were doing. So I thought that was really interesting how I went with the word clan instead of, group of people or something like that. So, okay, so the first story here, it discusses the relationship between the Japanese force and the Korean police. I came up, kind of hard to tell with this, but as I was thinking about it even more over the last, day and a half, it comes down to this boy. He is really dedicated to the Japanese people. He's a Korean, but he really wants a position in the Japanese police force. And so he's going around telling on all these Koreans. He would spy on every Korean within their clan or within their village that they were in, and he'd go and report to the Japanese police, and he'd tell them, oh, well, so-and-so's doing this, so-and-so badmouth the Japanese. So obviously what the Japanese police force do, they'd come in and take care of the situation. But there were always just little minor instances that were never getting him anywhere. But he got wind of a Korean who had ran off to China to escape the Japanese. But then when he came back, he was obviously going to be sneaking in and stuff during the occupation. This boy found out about it. So he went and watched the house for about 10 days, and then when he saw the man actually return into the house, he ran straight to the police and told them, and they came and took the man. They're beating him up and everything like that, and they told the boy, that's great, now we're giving you a position in the Japanese police force. So the boy went to the police station, and he's sitting there all excited, getting ready to go in for, I guess, his interview or whatever you call it, in his employment into the police force. And as he was sitting there waiting, all excited about what was happening, they see these 2 other Japanese policemen bring in the guy that he had betrayed, this Korean. And he's beat up and bloody, and just completely bruised and everything. And the boy got this sick feeling in his stomach about, crap, what did I just do? This isn't what I thought being part of this Japanese police force was. I thought it was bringing everybody together, and it's not. And so he ends up coming up with a plan with some other people that they take these couple of Japanese officers, and they go off and get them drunk, and discuss questions with them and everything like that. And during this time, the boy takes the man and breaks him out of prison and runs off. So obviously the Japanese come back, and they're really shocked at what happened because they thought the boy was really dedicated. But again, it's a story that's related around blood and how family comes before anything else. No matter what someone else does, if they break the law, you've got to watch out for your family because that's most important. And then later on, when the Japanese left and things like that, they returned as best friends. So it was really a unique story and pretty cool to see this big change with the boy.
So what do you think? Why write stories about the Japanese period so late after the Japanese period? I feel like writers of the time period are writing more about communism, which he does later.
Yeah.
But why Japanese period in the 1970s?
Well, the only thing I can think of was he was born in 1953, so he is kind of there for some of it, in my opinion. So he probably just wrote kind of out of experience maybe, or his idea of kind of just how, family needed to be together. So I wasn't able to find too much about it being true or false stories as far as that went. But because he was born kind of, a little bit into the time, he wanted to write something about it, feeling a connection to the past. So just his idea with it. And like I said, again, with him not having family growing up, he really just focused on what it was like. And maybe, in my opinion, I'm sure we'll all agree with on this, the Koreans really wanted to stick together to hold on to their ideals, to their culture. And so that's what he was really focusing on during this time. Maybe he heard other stories and done something about it. So, but yeah, I couldn't find too much on it. I found, overviews of the story, but it was really hard to find any surrounding facts about it. So, the second episode here, again, similar to the last one, loyalty to blood before ideology. that no matter the choices or previous actions, if they're related to you, then it is your duty to protect them no matter the cost to yourself. So this one had to do with two women. I think this is the North and South Koreans with this, that a boy had two female cousins that were with the North Koreans, and they had ran off to join the guerrillas. And during this time, the Koreans are trying to keep things, as close as they can with peace and stuff, but they're really close to the mountainsides. As we know, Korea's surrounded by mountains, and the guerrillas were up in the mountains. They'd come down, pillage the villages or things like that, and take stuff and run off with supplies. But these two females of his are captured. The two female cousins are captured from this group of people, and when they get captured, the police take them to the prison and stuff. But they were apparently really beautiful, and these policemen, being who they are, terrible men, they wanted to take them for the night and stuff. But this cousin wanted to decide to break them out, even though they were going against everything. They didn't agree with the North, but because again it came down to blood and the loyalty of family, they came up with a strategy of breaking them out. So they took all these bonfires and stuff, put them on the side of the hill, put a bunch of bullets under them so they just shoot off. So it started scaring the people down in the village, thinking the guerrillas were shooting and attacking the village. So the police ran off with these it'd be what would be, I guess, our FBI agents or whatever. They ran off to the actual police station and, hid with the police in the police station all night long and freaked out. And then once the morning came and the bullets stopped, they all just took off. They left the women, didn't even, they weren't able to do anything to them, just kind of left them. So the cousins were actually able to save them. And he actually talks about the ideology at the end of the story too. He's saying, that we need to, again, defend family before ideology, no matter what their views are, no matter what they have done. But it is our job as a people to defend them because we are all related in blood. Okay. This third episode again. This one comes out with it kind of black and white. Can I borrow that for a second? I didn't have me a copy, so I had to read this. But there was a, or I'm not sure if I marked it in yours, that I wanted to point out. Okay. Okay. Well, this one is just really quick and short. There's nothing really to it other than the communists at the end of the Korean War are fleeing, and running to the north. They're leaving the south here. And the south come up with strategies to help defend, their brothers and stuff as they're coming, because the north on their way through would try and drag people and force volunteers out of them and just take them to the north, and say, well, your son is now volunteered and part of the, Korean Communist Army, and they take them and just go off with them. But as they come through, these South Koreans came up with a plan in order to help keep their children and family and stuff safe. So it kind of gives a little story about that, how they irritate the communist officers and police enough to the point where they just leave the village because they can't stand being around the South Koreans anymore. But the one paragraph I wanted to read for those of you that have it is the very last paragraph on the last page. That really kind of sums up almost all three of these stories that I really liked. He says, now the clan has virtually dissolved, and even those who remain in our hometown and come into daily contact often quarrel over self-interested trifles. Still, I hold fast to the belief that in matters of ultimate importance, blood will win, that whatever system or ideology may come between fellow clansmen, they will never allow themselves to shed one another's blood. So again, I like that. He uses the word, clansmen, as I point out with the clan in Merriam-Webster's dictionary with that it means family. Now, it says, that whatever system or ideology may come between fellow clansmen. So again, I said, we all have family, I'm sure, right? Everybody's got family? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, good. So we all know that. Even though sometimes we might get into arguments with our, siblings or parents or whatever, if worse came to worse, we'd jump and run with a bullet for them. So again, I like how he said this, that we will never allow themselves to shed one another's blood. So no matter what, they'll never come down to killing one another, betraying one another, or anything of Swords. And like I said, this, I'm sure everybody feels the same connection with family, right? Okay. And then it uses a word in here that I wasn't sure about. I asked if someone would help me out with this. It's second page. It says "en masse." It says they would allow the first retreating army that passed through to slaughter them en masse.
En masse,
Was
like
it just
as
en
a
masse?
whole.
Just like a bunch of people at once.
Well, that's stupid. Okay, never mind. Sorry, I was not thinking Spanish when I was reading this. I was like, yeah, I can't find that in any Korean dictionary. Okay, that makes sense. I feel like an idiot. Okay, now that makes more sense to the story. Okay. Okay, I have one Korean part I wanted to pull up. Like I said, it did not come up on this PowerPoint, so. Sorry, I swear I had it pulled up until I had to restart my laptop this morning, so I apologize. What were you guys' overall thoughts of his three stories? Anybody have any other insights besides what I had there?
I think it's sad to read this in the context of divided Korea, and wonder if that might be a point.
Divided Korea?
Yeah, because now we have Korea in North and South Korea, and reading something that says, you know, in matters of ultimate importance, blood will win, whereas clearly Korea is almost, you know, irreconcilably divided today. It's really sad.
That's a good point. Let's see that way.
I totally agree with that. I mean, you have like a major sentiment in the South. A lot of people want the 20 and stuff, and they made that movie, the JSA, about the North and South Korean soldiers across the DMZ that make friends, and I think that's kind of what he's getting at is the whole that they're all Koreans, and in the end, eventually, they're gonna get back together and be one big family again.
Yeah, I wonder if it is a commentary on reconciliation.
Because I mean, the major schism here. I don't think you pronounce that word. Anyway,
Oh well.
the major division here is that it's mainly between communists and Democrats. I won't say Democrats because that.
Democratic
different.
sympathizers.
Democratic sympathizers. Yeah, I mean that's the main division here. So, and that's the main division in North and South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Except I don't know if it really is. It's
Mm-hmm.
mainly just like there's some nut job up there.
That's true. I like that insight. It's just, that did not even cross my mind. I wasn't even thinking about that. Seeing all about family ties. That's good. Next time I do the presentation, I'll have your help with that.
Considering the elements between the three stories are very related and very common. Obviously, this it says a lot about what Korean culture is about, and of course, looking at today's circumstances, obviously, as we've just discussed, it's not the most favorable. That's kind of what lies at the heart of that culture, and despite other elements that may threaten to divide it, the people are one heart, one mind, nevertheless.
No poor them.
I promised Professor Pearson I had it up this morning, but my laptop was freaking out, so I had to restart it. I can't pull up my YouTube video. It's still, was it you, Jessica, that used the YouTube video?
I did.
You gave me that brilliant idea, so I was like, oh, I'm going to use one too. Those things are awesome. And they gave a really great kind of detailed talk here.
Did you do a present?
Yeah, I did.
Man,
It was a snowflake for winter. Seoul
presents
1964
baffle
winter.
and amaze me.
I know, they're my favorite. I'll never go back to PowerPoint.
I saw the new one. Yeah, I should probably.
I tried using Prezi, but I
You'll
couldn't
be
figure it out.
addicted. If I go like, I'm gonna be right in front of the
Stuff
camera.
on here.
Thank you.
So you said you like print C better than the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I do.
No, you
I think it's more fun.
Oh, okay. Like what makes it different besides like the
Movement,
format? Just the.
visual movement.
Yeah. Are they hard to make? It seems like
Not
they're
at
hard to
all. Not at all. It's so easy.
make. So I'm just intimidated by them, I think.
Uh-huh. Yeah, once you learn to play with like the little bracket structures, like you'll never go back. You just never will.
No, I probably will. And I don't think, it depends on what you're doing, but for the business school,
Mm-hmm.
they don't like, I don't think they like presentation.
I'm sure. Too artistic.
Yeah, they want concise, really boring PowerPoint.
White background, black text,
Yeah.
Times New Roman.
Exactly.
I hate Times New Roman. It's the worst font ever.
I like Times New Roman. I'm a big fan of Times New Roman.
Not a big fan of
But
Sanskrit right now.
did
I'm
you
getting
read that?
Courier Sans is what it's like.
Courier Sans, please.
I'm too
Did you read that article where the kid did the analysis of government spending on printing, and he realized if they would use what was the font? Garamond instead of Times New Roman, they could save billions of dollars every year. Because of the darkness, like how much ink is deposited on the page when you use those fonts.
Is that what it was? I heard
Yeah.
it was just like
Serious?
reducing the font size by
That's funny.
44.
No, it's the amount of ink that the fonts use.
So just changing the font.
That's
Yeah,
nuts.
Times New Roman produces thicker lines, like, and uses more font in more concentrated places. And so if you change to Garamond, then you reduce your font use, like your ink use by like half.
Really?
Uh-huh.
'Cause I heard.
And they refused.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know, completely
Oh my
ridiculous.
Well, it's because
Uh-huh.
if the government spends less money on their ink suppliers, they reduce that by billions of dollars. What do you think that does to the economy?
Yeah, we
You
all
can't
get
just-
angry.
You can't just save a bunch of money without not spending a bunch of money in a certain place.
Of course not.
I made this awesome resume. Check this
Let me
out.
see.
It's my Courier. right there.
Courier Sans.
And then I use this other font. Anyway, but it's my awesome resume.
Yeah,
It's all
no,
proud of
it looks good on your resume. I like that.
Right.
It looks like a typewriter.
Right. And I was all proud of it, but then the Meredith School
Mhm.
wants you to have their resume, which
Which
like
is very boring.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, come on, right?
I know, nothing more boring than a resume.
It looks like this looks like a high schooler can make.
I know
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. I had a friend who graduated in graphic design, and he was like, had this crazy resume. He didn't even have words on half. It was just like,
Did you stop recording? Or is it still running?
It's still going. Oh, hey. We gotta keep it. It's gonna be one YouTube video, so sorry, Dr. Peterson.
I hope you like that. Classification on fonts.
Mhm.
I want to get into, this kid, he's one who opened my eyes to fonts. There's so many fonts out there.
There are.
And then my wife went nuts and downloaded like 1,000 fonts from the internet.
Yeah, there's so many cool fonts.
She can't use preset fonts, like it's a disease.
I remember in my middle school and high school, like, when we had to type in Hawaiian font, like we had to go to Hawaiian Helvetica. There's an actual particular font for that because it helped the different markings, diacritical mark systems come out better.
Yeah.
Trying to speak Hawaiian?
I can understand a little bit more than I can speak, but
Did you ever
very
live in Hawaii?
basic. I grew up in Hawaii.
Cool.
Yeah. Born and raised.
It's just all about vowels. That's what Hawaiian's about.
There you go.
It's about vowels.
Consonants
I'm
and
more like an
vowels.
Oreo. We can get the
Right on the
concepts,
outside, while on the inside.
basically.
Delicious.
Although Hawaii, I wish
Me too. I got in there. I could have gone there.
You're Hawaii?
No, University of Hawaii.
grad school.
Yeah.
You're going to Boston instead? It's
I
so
know.
cold
It's
there.
gonna be freezing.
You could be hanging out on the beach, swimming with the sea turtles.
Seriously.
Snorkeling in Hanama Bay. Or you can get
I know it was a really hard decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine though, living in Hawaii. I would love that.
That'd be
I would
awesome.
just
Cost
love
of living's
that.
gonna be pretty high.
Yeah, I'm
It's
sure.
just pretty expensive. The bus is ridiculous. I think it's like at least $250. maybe
Ooh, that's
$3.
fun.
That's okay because it's small, though. I mean, I bet I could ride my bike across
That's
the
true.
island in a couple minutes.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I
Did you
can't-
find it? Not find it? Should I
No,
stop the
my
video?
YouTube's not working. It's coming up with all like random things, and then it won't let me. I can't pull it up on there because it won't find it on there, and I can't. So it's really frustrating.
Okay,
I can
should
pull
we
it up
stop?
on mine and just throw the HDMI cable in straight into my computer if you want.
That's
Do
true.
it. Oh, yes.
Let's try that.
Because I didn't have any problems with HDMI.
So, Jessica,
Mhm.
you were in literature class last semester.
Yeah.
What was the final like? I feel like we received really low info about it.
Yeah, so the literature class last semester we did a lot more like things that we translated together as a class. For example, we did a lot of Chinese poetry that you'd memorize like the Hanja for, and he'd have us like explain pieces of it, things like that. I don't know about final for this class.
Is there gonna be like author recognition? It'll be like, who wrote the stories?
No, the final for
I doubt
math
it.
class is just a bunch of essay questions.
Yeah,
Give us, like,
Write
a
about the
poem,
story.
It's like, yeah, identify the
Mhm.
things. But we didn't really study mechanics of poetry, so that's like, that was a major part of last one.
Yeah, like we did a lot more really specific things. Like Chinese poems are structured exactly this way, and here are four that we looked at. You know, so you have to know these ones. But
And then, what else did we do? I mean, we wrote about certain people, I feel like.
yeah, like Jung Won-ju.
Someone who, like, we wrote about Hishijo and, like, why it's important.
I assume that for the final we'll have like maybe comparing translations and critiquing, and then Kim So-ol, 진달거,
Yeah.
and then probably our translation.
As far as I've gotten my memory.
Yeah.
I'll just listen to Maya song.
아름치코의 밤들이 오리라.
Hey.
Yeah, I listen to that. I really do.
I'll just listen to like a rock song.
You
That's- it's teaching
This
me.
poem is not a shijo, right?
No.
It's just
Definitely not
Is it freestyle or is it of a different form?
It doesn't have a
Body
form.
poetry.
It's no real pure form.
Translated freehand without any structure.
I think he'll like it better
If it like
original
matches
structure,
the
he likes
line
its
structure.
original.
And
Yeah.
Because no matter what, it does have structure.
Yeah.
In poetry, that's a really important thing.
I mean, make sure like there's the right number of lines, but
Yeah.
other than that,
Here we go.
hey, we got it.
Oh yeah, there's a loan analysis back there too, if you guys want to run some data mining.
Ooh, please.
Okay.
Oh, you're running it on the Windows side.
Oh, I don't know. I just plugged
Yeah.
it in and pulled it up on whatever.
Yeah, I have to do it for Excel
Oh, really?
because I can't run Mac Excel with some of the stuff I have to do in ISIS. Microsoft Excel is still better.
Have you taken spreadsheet automation? ISIS is like ISIS 520 or something.
No, I'm gonna take an advanced VBA class if
Yeah.
I can fit it in because with VBA is really awesome.
Yeah.
But
So I'm signed up for that class, and it's called. I think it might be what you're thinking of. It's called spreadsheet automation. They do.
is it data mining and stuff like that?
Yeah, they do some of that, grabbing data from the web, right?
I'm not sure. We haven't done. I'm actually gonna ask him about how to do that because I know you can write it into your program to grab data from the web. But what we're doing is like taking massive databases and then.
Okay. So, sorry, here we go. Try this round 25. Okay. What this YouTube video is this is about a guy who he does a lot of things with the Korean authors. He has like probably 20 or so episodes of just different Korean authors. He gets really in depth and he does a quick 5-minute excerpt on the person. Gets really into depth with everything. And I figured rather than me staying up here doing all the talking, you know, and asking you guys questions, we'll let this guy do about a quick little 5-minute excerpt on his research and stuff that he's done on Myeongyeol. So.
Amazing Grace.
Good day, this is Charles Montgomery from www.ktlit, and today is the third segment of our 300 Seconds On. 300 Seconds On is a short video clip about Korean literature, and that timer is to remind me not to go over 300 seconds. Today we're going to talk about a pretty famous Korean author who's been translated into at least English and French, and probably much more that I'm unaware of, and that's Myeongyeol. Myeongyeol is, he's in his 60s now, and he started writing when he was just about 30, and in that time he wrote something like 20 novels and 50 short stories, just really a prodigious output. The most important thing perhaps about Myeongyeol occurred to his family during the Korean Civil War, and that was his father supported the North. Not only did his father support the North, but his father defected to the North leaving Myeongyeol and the remainder of the family in the south. This created for Myeongyeol and his family a stigma. And as you read Myeongyeol's writing, it's always good to keep that experience in mind because it quite clearly affected the kinds of things he wrote, his political leanings, and in some cases, one of which we'll talk about, it also affected the choice of things he wrote about. And so I'm just going to go through a couple of the books that he wrote that have been translated into English. And the first is An Appointment with My Brother. An Appointment with My Brother is the story of a man who wants to meet his father in the north. I think already you can see Myeongyeol's life is impinging on his fiction. He goes up north, but not in time. His father dies. Instead, he meets his brother, and there's some really very interesting conversations between the two brothers, brother from the north, brother from the south, in which they sort of try to hash out family and ideological issues. And then in classic Korean fashion, these problems are to some extent fixed by a night of strong drinking. And the second work that I'd like to discuss is available online, and it's available in a paperback and a hardback, and it's The Poet. And this is a book that might have been interesting to Myeongyeol because it's about someone in a similar situation. It's about Kim Sak-hat. Kim Sak-hat was a poet whose family had been disgraced by his grandfather, I believe. And so in response to this particular disgrace, Kim Sak-hat put on a bamboo hat and wandered the countryside. During his life, he exchanged his poetry for lodging, for food. Occasionally he used it to seduce women. And sometimes he actually used it in something very much like battle rap. He would challenge other poets to have contests, poetry contests. And he had a very clever trick in which he would recite poems in Chinese, Hanja, that would mean one thing in Hanja, but when you listened to them in Korean, it would mean another thing. So he was a very clever poet, and this is a really interesting book, The Poet by Myeongyeol. The book for which he's perhaps most famous, Our Twisted Hero, and Our Twisted Hero won the Isang Award in, I think, 1987. Really great book, can be read two ways. It's the story of a young man who moves from the big city to the small city and believes he will be sort of the hero, the champion, the smartest person in his school. Instead, when he gets there, he finds that the classroom is run by a bully. The bully runs the classroom with the tacit acceptance of the teacher. The teacher loves that his classroom is run in an orderly fashion, that basically everything is always clean, chores get done. And the narrator, who is not the twisted hero is the bully, the narrator challenges this regime and just gets beaten down horribly. He simply can't. There's too much social pressure for him to succeed. He succumbs to that regime. That regime is eventually overthrown when another teacher comes in and sees what's happened. And this is a really interesting, this can be read just as a story of school bullies and going to a new town. So it can be read by 5th or 6th graders really on that level. But it also combines some elements of William Golding's Lord of the Flies and maybe Orwell's Animal Farm in the way that it's a metaphor of what dictatorship and power and absolute power can do. And even more importantly, it talks a little bit about what happens when that power is removed. So really interesting book, Our Twisted Hero. Last book, just to demonstrate his wit, is Twofold Song. This is a love story. And this love story is amazing, surreal. It goes in and out of what I would call reality, but it shows a complete another side. And I should also say that it has something you don't have. It has an autograph by Myeongyeol to me. So those books are the books that are most easily available. An Appointment with My Brother, Twofold Song, Our Twisted Hero, and The Poet. And you can find all of those on Amazon, and all of those are relatively inexpensive. I should say I have drunk with Myeongyeol, and he's a prodigious drinker and funny storyteller. And I would do it again if I had a chance. And Myeongyeol, 5 great books, and that is 300 seconds.
All right.
Nicely done.
So yeah, it was a little interesting, but I always like that video because it kind of brings in more of his literature, and like he said, he connects everything, every literature thing to his life.
Rap battles.
Yeah, like rap battles and stuff like that.
Who was that guy? That radio.
Apparently, I can't remember his name. He's a really famous guy that's an expert on Korean writers and stuff like that. He, like I said, this is just, it's called episode 1, but he has about 20, 30 episodes. He does a 300 seconds of all these different Korean literatures. So it's pretty cool. I'd actually recommend looking at some others. I kind of looked at another one myself. I can't remember who I watched on, but he told me some other fun facts about stuff. But yeah, what were your guys' overall impression of Myeongyeol besides just his stories? if there were any.
Yeah, he's a good drinker.
I'm curious, I was trying to figure out where rap battles would have come into play with his story writings. Like, I didn't necessarily see anything in his life or anything that might have implied what that was, unless he just did something like that for the Times. I'm not sure. But I was trying to make a connection, but I obviously couldn't get
That'd be a really fun paper.
Yeah.
He was
Rap
like
battles and
impoverished
Korean
at one
poetry.
point, right? I mean, that's could have been how he got around. Like that was a fictional thing, right? The storyteller and the
Yeah.
fictitious story did
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah. But again, with his life and moving around, you could technically say he was kind of poor. Like, no one wanted him. I'm sure they didn't buy him a lot of stuff either, you know. So, I mean, he was probably fed, but I doubt he grew up with lots of money.
Yeah, so I think he could have like challenged people to.
It appears that
No,
he didn't allow circumstances to overwhelm him, but he did something about that, so.
Yeah. See, I like that. He did some things like, you know, figured out ways to overcome his trials and stuff. And obviously with him, college wasn't doing it, so he found literature as one of his escapes probably from a reality, but yet was able to tell his story in a very fictional way that he was able to kind of break away from his past, but at the same time, you know, put it on paper in a much better ideal way of his thoughts on how it should have or wish it could have been.
And I mean, he's still alive.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Does something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think I read something on he has like three kids maybe. He has 3 kids, 2 or 3 kids, something like that. So yeah, a little much for a Korean, but you know, he's like half Mormon there. But yeah, again, he's Christian, so who knows? But yeah, reading some of the other short stories on there, I did another overview on a couple of the books. They obviously did seem interesting, but I never got the chance to actually read them. But yeah, so I felt the YouTube video did a really solid job about, you know, just overviewing his life and the other stories that he had. Don't forget Amazon, that's where you can buy him. So,
Yes.
But no, does anyone else have, Jesse, you guys have insights on it? Do you think he did right to escape kind of reality, but yet put it in a fictional way in which he still remembered, but tried to connect to it?
Yeah, I think definitely. And I think that goes with realism and autobiographical writing probably becoming a genre where it wasn't before.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep asking you questions.
I'm
It's awesome.
Is he still writing today, or is he done? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure. That's why I think his last book was written, or I guess not written, sorry, printed 2 years ago. I was trying to, I can't remember. Yeah, it was only a couple years ago, so I'm not sure if he retired or not yet. But at 68 years old, if he's still writing, that's pretty good, right?
That's really,
Mm-hmm.
that's really impressive.
Does he have the ability to live pretty comfortably off of his writing career? Or
Yes. Once he got all the awards and stuff that he did, he became very notorious, and his books started selling like wildfire.
Mm.
Notorious big.
So he's actually making a ton of money off of stuff like that. So.
I'm happy for him. Good for him.
Yeah, and like I said, no one respected him until his literature came out. You know, that was when people started noticing him. Even his family, that. Okay, whatever.
From the streets.
Yeah. Problem was, like I said, yeah, no one.
Another episode of Rags to Riches.
Sorry, Wikipedia here on the life. I didn't put this in there, but I guess I should have. It says since 1999, he has served as the head of Walk Literary Center, which is a residential program for budding writers, and he is currently a chair professor at Hanguk University of Foreign Studies. So that's kind of what he's doing now. So,
Foreign studies. Wouldn't have expected that.
yeah, I know, it was kind of unique. But again, he does make mention to the Yin Dynasty and stuff, how in the box office stories about how the police were very similar to how they acted. So my thoughts with the foreign studies was he got some Chinese and Japanese, you know, really solid history background behind that. That's my guess with the writings as far as foreign studies, because it did throw me off too. I was like, I don't think he speaks English as far as I know, but you know, maybe he's at least decent at it, seeing as how he drank with an American. So, but
That's true.
But I figured he's at least decent there. But again, the history and foreign studies, I think he did for his own benefit of writing. So that would be my guess with that. But sorry, my other YouTube video on the place box office stories didn't work. But that is about it on Myeongyeol. So.
Yay.